In the modern world, there exists a vast evolutionary gap between humans and animals, which seems to separate us from the forces of evolution. But our ancient ancestors lived in a world very different from ours. They inhabited a planet populated with many other species of humans and hominins, and came face to face with some of these creatures that bridged the gap between human and animals. One of these was a pygmy hominin from the stunning and remote island of Flores Indonesia. But what is the origin of the Flores Island hominin? To explore this, we'll analyze the possibility that Homo floresiensis descended from Homo habilis, or early Homo erectus, which migrated from Africa to South Asia. Their survival likely involved adaptations in response to environmental constraints and may have enabled a wider range, extending through what is now the Philippines, Flores, and potentially Sulawesi, regions largely connected by lower sea levels during certain periods. We'll investigate the evidence for early human migration, the genetic and physical adaptation mechanisms, and the ecological pressures that could have influenced the species' diminutive morphology and survival strategy, including the role of environmental and competitive pressures from Homo erectus, or even being hunted themselves. Despite being placed in the Homo genus, this species was not human in the true sense, as there is no evidence that they were closely related to Homo sapiens. In fact, Homo floresiensis in many ways was similar to the primitive Homo naledi from South Africa, but despite being placed in the Homo genus, is not a true human.
Suddenly, we have found a small-brained hominid that's primitive, that's not a human, not anything like one of those large-brained hominids.
This pygmy archaic human has captivated researchers since its discovery on Flores Island, one of the most stunningly beautiful and rugged volcanic islands in the world. Standing approximately 1 meter tall, around 3 feet, and bearing a mix of primitive and advanced traits, this pygmy human is enigmatic. Some theories suggest it evolved from Homo erectus and underwent island dwarfism. However, an alternative hypothesis posits that Homo floresiensis can trace its ancestry back to Homo habilis, which could have reached South Asia before migrating to the islands. Indeed, fossil and tool evidence across Asia supports the hypothesis that early hominins such as Homo habilis could have reached Southeast Asia well before Homo erectus. This evidence implies that South Asia was inhabited by earlier waves of hominins, which likely exploited coastal and forested environments across what would later become islands. During glacial periods, the lowering of sea levels created land bridges across much of Southeast Asia, connecting islands like Java, Sumatra, Borneo, and the Malay Peninsula to form the vast Sundaland subcontinent. This interconnected landscape would have provided a migration corridor for early hominins moving from the Asian mainland to regions now isolated by ocean. With this extensive land area available for migration, hominins likely spread through the region, reaching Flores and perhaps beyond, as they adapted to various environments. Flores Island is part of the Lesser Sunda Islands, a group within the larger Malay archipelago. The Lesser Sunda Islands extend from Bali and Lombok in the west to Timor in the east, and Flores is located between the islands of Sumbawa and Timor. During low sea levels, several of these islands would be connected by land bridges or very shallow seas to form larger islands. Lombok, Flores, and Sumbawa would have been connected into a long island stretching around 1,000 kilometers or 600 miles. This is collectively known as Nusa Tenggara and would have been the Flores hominins' larger range. A very deep strait separates Bali and Lombok, which were never connected even during extremely low sea levels. This boundary is known as the so-called Wallace Line because it separates Asian and Australian wildlife. Around 800,000 years ago, during marine isotope stage 20, sea levels were significantly lower than today due to extensive glaciation. This period was part of the Pleistocene epoch, characterized by glacial interglacial cycles with fluctuating sea levels. During this specific glacial stage, sea levels are estimated to have been about 60 to 80 meters or 200 to 260 feet lower than present-day levels. The lower sea levels exposed vast continental shelves in Southeast Asia, connecting landmasses like those in the Sunda Shelf region, which includes parts of present-day Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. This exposed land would have provided migration routes for early hominins, facilitating movement across regions that are now islands separated by seas. What's more, the climatic and ecological turmoil associated with a comet impact and geomagnetic reversal around 790,000 years ago may have significantly impacted early hominin populations in Southeast Asia. Geological records suggest that these events correlated with a period of massive environmental change, including disrupted ecosystems, increased volcanic activity, tsunamis, rapid sea level rise, and a cooling phase. For early hominin populations, such apocalyptic conditions would have posed significant survival challenges, to say the least. Such an environmental cataclysm likely caused population bottlenecks, reducing genetic diversity in surviving populations, likely leading to inbreeding. The ancestors of Homo floresiensis may have experienced this bottleneck, with only a small number of individuals surviving and adapting to the new conditions. Over time, the reduced gene pool and isolated environment could lead to rapid evolutionary shifts, especially in morphology and body size. Surviving hominin groups would have adapted to scarce resources and limited space, particularly if they inhabited isolated regions like Flores. Over many generations, smaller body size would offer a survival advantage under conditions of low food availability. Additionally, such an event would select for traits that could withstand further environmental volatility, such as adaptability and resilience to climatic extremes. Nevertheless, we have no idea how these creatures lived, even though in our minds we see them living like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. In reality, they may have been ruthless savages. The discovery of a pygmy hominin on Flores demonstrates successful adaptation to a tropical island ecosystem. Limited in both space and resources, Flores would have favored smaller-bodied species, minimizing energy requirements and enabling survival in a competitive ecological niche. Island dwarfism, a well-documented phenomenon among insular animals, appears in their distinct morphology and aligns with the patterns seen in other extinct Southeast Asian megafauna, such as the pygmy elephant. Fossils of Homo erectus have been found throughout Java and parts of Indonesia, dating from around 1.5 million to 500,000 years ago, placing them within the same time frame and region as early Homo floresiensis' ancestors. This temporal overlap suggests that the two species may have encountered each other, with Homo erectus dominating the larger territories and resources due to its larger size and more advanced tool-making abilities. Meanwhile, their pint-sized ancestors would have faced intense competition for resources with Homo erectus, possibly driving them into more remote, less accessible island like Flores, where competition was lower. In these isolated habitats, natural selection could favor smaller size, allowing for more efficient survival strategies on limited resources. The separation from mainland populations and pressure from Homo erectus likely accelerated the evolution of unique features in this pygmy hominin, including its reduced stature and distinct cranial morphology. Indeed, the apocalyptic events of 790,000 years ago, marked by a comet impact and geomagnetic reversal, likely contributed to a population bottleneck and genetic diversity reduction among early hominins in Southeast Asia. Surviving groups faced severe environmental pressures that selected for adaptive traits, including smaller body size, resilience to diverse diets, and proficiency in tool-making for survival. These traits, honed in isolated island environments with fluctuating resources, suggest a lineage capable of enduring harsh conditions and adapting morphologically and behaviorally. During glacial maxima, sea levels were substantially lower, exposing the Sunda Shelf and creating terrestrial connections among the islands. However, as glacial periods ended and sea levels rose, these connections submerged, isolating island populations and fostering unique evolutionary paths. Rising sea levels approximately 600,000 years ago would have solidified the isolation of Flores, sealing the pygmy hominin and other species in unique ecological niches. The resulting insular dwarfism and morphological specialization reflect long-term adaptation to this restricted and fluctuating island environment. By the time this pygmy hominin was living on Flores, Environmental and competitive pressures had sculpted a species well suited to insular life, protected from direct competition with larger, more dominant hominins like Homo erectus. Their diminutive form, as well as their endurance on Flores until the arrival of modern humans, speaks to a legacy of survival under profound constraints, offering a fascinating glimpse into the adaptability and resilience of early hominins faced with both natural disasters and intense evolutionary pressures. The fossil and archaeological evidence on Flores provides crucial insights into Homo floresiensis's origins, morphology and adaptations. Key finds include skeletal remains dating to approximately 100,000 to 60,000 years ago, a 700,000-year-old arm bone fragment, and stone tools estimated to be about 900,000 years old, pointing to an ancient and continuous hominin presence on the island. The 700,000-year-old hominin arm bone, specifically a piece of humerus, was discovered along with other fragments such as mandibles and teeth, which resemble later specimens in both size and shape. Although these remains are not identical, their similarities suggest they may belong to an ancestral population. The size and shape of the arm bone point to a small-bodied hominin, implying that this diminutive size characteristic may have emerged much earlier than previously thought, possibly as a response to island dwarfism. Further supporting evidence of early hominin occupation comes from stone tools also found on Flores, which date back around 900,000 years. These tools include simple flakes and cores similar to those associated with early Homo species, indicating that early hominins were present on Flores and likely adapted to its unique environment nearly 1 million years ago. The tool assemblage aligns with the Oldowan tradition, characterized by simple, unrefined tools, suggesting that their ancestors possessed basic tool-making abilities. The most complete individual is an adult female and exhibits key morphological traits unique to Homo floresiensis, particularly in the skull, dentition and limb proportions. Her skull is small and low, with a broad face and relatively large teeth compared to its small body size. The cranial capacity of 426 cc's is significantly smaller than Homo erectus or modern humans, placing it within the range of Australopithecus. Despite her small brain, the brain shape and structure exhibit some advanced features similar to those seen in larger-brained hominins. The jaw shows some primitive characteristics such as relatively large teeth and a strong projecting lower jaw without a chin. Her limb proportions are unique, with short legs and relatively long arms contributing to a squat, stocky physique. This anatomy might have been advantageous in dense forest environments, enabling her to maneuver through rugged terrain efficiently. Additionally, the structure of the pelvis and lower limbs indicates adaptations for bipedal walking, though perhaps with a different gait than modern humans. The morphology, with a small stature and relatively lightweight frame and large hands and feet, aligns with insular dwarfism, a common evolutionary response among species on islands with limited resources and minimal predation. The combination of primitive and derived traits in her skeletal structure suggests that her species had adapted well to island living, managing to thrive in isolation for extended periods. The environment on Flores would have offered a variety of plant resources, supporting a diet that likely included fruits, tubers, nuts and leaves. Studies of comparable ecosystems and ethnobotanical knowledge of the region provide insights into the plants that the pygmy hominin might have utilized for food, medicine and tool-making. The island's flora was dominated by tropical forests, grasslands and montane areas, with an array of plant species known to be edible or otherwise useful to early humans. This includes fruits and nuts, such as figs and wild bananas, tubers and root vegetables including yams and taro, and other useful plants such as bamboo, ferns, wildflowers and herbs. Homo floresiensis would have had access to a variety of animals native to the island of Flores. These included unique species adapted to the island's ecosystem, with some dwarf species and others displaying island gigantism. The faunal assemblage suggests that Flores offered smaller prey, as well as some larger, albeit slow-moving, animals that a small-bodied hominin could have feasibly hunted with simple tools. Another significant discovery was made in the Philippines on the island of Luzon. Researchers reported the discovery of rhinoceros remains at the Kalinga site on Luzon, dating to approximately 709,000 years ago. This find included nearly complete skeletal remains, notably a set of ribs, limb bones, and a portion of the skull, along with evidence of butchery marks on the bones, suggesting early hominin interaction with the rhino, but it is unknown by what hominin. Cut marks and impact scars on the rhino bones indicate that hominins used tools to butcher the animal, likely for meat and marrow. These finds support the hypothesis that early hominins were capable of crossing water barriers, as Flores was never connected to the mainland by land bridges during glacial periods. This suggests that hominins might have used simple rafts or other means to reach the island, expanding our understanding of their dispersal abilities. This discovery has reshaped our understanding of early hominin migration in Southeast Asia, showing that they reached remote islands much earlier than previously thought, and interacted with local megafauna. Komodo dragons would have posed a threat to the Flores pygmy hominin, as well as a potential food source. These massive lizards, essentially modern-day dinosaurs, growing up to 3 meters or 10 feet, could have been hunted by using rudimentary spears, as engaging them directly would be highly risky. They provide an excellent source of meat and fat, but interactions with these predators would have been dangerous, as Komodo dragons have a toxic bite and a skilled ambush hunt to tears. The coastal areas and rivers on Flores would have provided fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. Even though no direct evidence of fishing tools has been found, the Flores pygmy hominin may have used basic methods to catch fish, such as traps made from bamboo. While they did not have advanced tools, evidence suggests they used simple stone tools for cutting, scraping, and possibly for spearing or striking prey. Given their size and brain capacity, they likely relied on cooperative group hunting strategies and used rudimentary traps and weapons. In summary, the hypothesis that Homo floresiensis descends from Homo habilis and survived through the apocalyptic conditions around 800,000 years ago sheds light on the evolutionary plasticity and resilience of early hominins. Adapting to an island ecosystem in response to the presence of larger competitors like Homo erectus, and surviving the challenges of environmental change, rising sea levels, and biological isolation for 1 million years, Homo floresiensis was one savage pygmy hominin. Indeed, the evidence from Flores paints a compelling picture of a small, resilient hominin that was highly adapted to its island environment, exhibiting a mosaic of primitive and advanced traits that reflect a long evolutionary history on Flores. And with that tantalizing statement, we leave you to ponder the mysteries of our shared human history. And before you go, please share, comment, and check out the other videos on our channel. Thank you and take care.